Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Patient with me. God is not through with me yet. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. When God gets through with me, when God gets through with me, I shall come forth, I shall come forth as pure gold. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. When God gets through with me, when God gets through with me, I shall come forth as pure gold. Now if you should see me and I'm not walking right, or if you should hear me and I'm not talking right, please remember that God's not through with me. And when He's finished with me, I'll be what He wants me to be. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. Oh yes, please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. When God gets through with me, when God gets through with me, I shall come forth as pure gold. Now if you should see me and I'm not walking right, or if you should hear me and I'm not talking right, please remember that God is not through with me, no. But when He's finished with me, I'll be what He wants me to be. Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. Oh yes, please be patient with me. is frightening. You see right through the mess inside me. You call me out to pull me in. You tell me I can start again, and I don't need to keep on hiding. I'm fully known and loved by you. You won't let go, no matter what I do. And it's not one or the other. It's hard truth and ridiculous grace to be known, fully known and loved by you. I'm fully known and loved by you. It's so like you to keep pursuing. It's so like me to go astray. But you got my heart with your truth, the kind of love that's bulletproof. And I surrender to your kindness. I'm fully known and loved by you. You won't let go, no matter what I do. And it's not one or the other. It's hard truth and ridiculous grace to be known, fully known and loved by you. I'm fully known and loved by you. How real, how wide, how rich, how high is your heart? I cannot find the reasons why you give me so much. How real, how wide, how rich, how high is your heart? I cannot find the reasons why you give me so much. I'm fully known and loved by you. You won't let go, no matter what I do. And it's not one or the other. It's hard truth and ridiculous grace to be known, fully known and loved by you. I'm fully known and loved by you. It's so unusual, it's frightening. I'm fully known and loved by you.
Good morning, Crosspointe. Thank you for joining us this morning. It is a joy to be in community with you. You know, we say that a lot around here. We talk a lot about being a community. But like you, I feel that push and pull regarding community. I know I need people. I need to be known. I want to feel connected to others. I want to share my life in a meaningful, connected way with others. But like you, I'm also well aware of everything that pulls against that. Right? Like, we're all busy. There's a lot to do. And sometimes it feels like being part of a community is something I need to put on the back burner for just a little while until I get everything in order. But a lot of times that becomes a little while longer and a little while longer. Or sometimes it feels like people are just difficult. And I would just rather be by myself. Sometimes I'm difficult. I mean, I want to be known, but if I'm known, then people will realize that I don't have it all together. And we wouldn't want that. So I understand the push-pull when it comes to prioritizing engaging in community. But in time, I've come to appreciate which of those narratives is telling a better story and which is largely resisting being known out of a sense of fear. So in that spirit, I want to encourage you to lean into making some connections in this community. We have some fantastic ways to do that. And this is an optimal time to engage. We have lots of different groups to choose from. We have some short-term groups, and those groups are centered around a topic, and they allow you to gain new information around that particular topic and grow in that way. We have some long-term groups that will help you to grow in relationship with others. This is where you really start forming those meaningful, deeper connections that all human beings long for, even when we try to avoid it. We want to be known and we want to know others, and this is where that really happens in our community. So I encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities to engage more deeply with others. Some of our groups meet in person, some meet online. You can find all the details at crosspoint.org/groups. Speaking of groups, we also want to foster this sense of connectedness and belonging among our middle and high school students. Our student ministry life groups are really wonderful environments. There's lots of fun bonding activities and ridiculous student events and meaningful bonds that students form with their peers. And then there are these fantastic leaders that guide discussion each week in a way that helps students to grow their faith. Life groups give students a space to ask questions about what they're learning about our faith. And they think about, well, how does this shape my life as a follower of Jesus? Our student ministry life groups for middle and high school students are kicking off on Sunday, September 11th. You can find links to sign up for middle and high school life groups on our middle and high school pages on our website. These life groups are led by awesome volunteers. I cannot tell you enough how wonderful these human beings are. We are currently looking for a few more 6th grade small group leaders. Now, don't worry, you are not going to have to relive your own middle school experience. Leading a middle school life group allows you to do a couple of really important things simultaneously. It allows you to play a key role in a young person's life and nurture their faith along the way. We all know that middle and high school students need adults in addition to their parents that they can count on. They need communities that are willing to walk alongside them during their adolescent and teenage years. And you get to help create that community while having a lot of fun. Our middle school leaders will tell you that while leading a life group is certainly a commitment, it's also fulfilling and fun. If that's something that you're interested in being a part of, please reach out to me at students@crosspoint.org. Finally, in the spirit of healthy community, we will not be gathering in person next Sunday due to the Labor Day holiday weekend. Now, you might be thinking, JT, you just spoke about the importance of being in community. Indeed, I did. We want to be a healthy community. And the reality is that on large holiday weekends like Labor Day, lots of folks go out of town to get that one last long weekend summer trip. And that's awesome. But with a lot fewer folks in town, it means that we can be stretched really thin on volunteers on those Sunday mornings. And when we're so short on volunteers, it really stretches the volunteers that are here really thin. And so while you might not notice a big change in the adult space, this can create significant issues in other areas of our church, like children's ministry. So in the interest of being a healthy community and with the opportunity for a great online option, we will be online only next Sunday. So I will see you on YouTube next Sunday. As you can see, there's a lot of great things going on here at Crosspointe. If you want to participate in helping to fund all that this community is up to, we invite you to contribute financially. You can give through stocks, through PayPal, mail-in checks, debit cards, by going to crosspoint.org/contribute. Or you can text crosspointenc to 77977 and you'll have a link that is sent to your phone and you can choose from there how you would like to contribute. Thanks, Crosspointe.
Live the Questions by Rilke. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is, to live everything. Live the questions now. Live everything. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer.
So this image was discovered in 1955 in a catacomb called Via Latina in Rome, Italy. And construction was building on a home, and before you can build there, you have to have someone come and inspect the area for important ancient history. Well, when they inspected, they found a catacomb when they began to dig. And if you don't know what catacombs are, they're underground burial grounds. And in around Rome, they were principally used by Christians and Jews. Because Christianity was illegal for a time, many Christians used catacombs as secret meeting places, and the walls and the ceilings were often painted with frescoes of important narratives from the life of Jesus and various other stories of Christian heroes and martyrs. If you've never had the opportunity to visit a catacomb and you're curious, you can actually now visit several of them virtually. Thank you to Google Maps and their virtual tours. I'm pretty sure this isn't exactly what the saints meant when they referred to having eternal life, but maybe it's kind of close. And thank you to Google for allowing us to do that. So in real life, this painting is about 4 feet high and it's about 6 feet long. And it's one of the oldest depictions of the story of Jesus and the woman at the well that we're aware of, at least. There have been multiple versions of this picture found in other places, in various churches and other catacombs. It's been used for funeral art, but this one is believed to be the oldest. And its existence alerts us to the importance of the story and its unconventional woman who's the main character. So the woman in this image, she's often referred to as the woman at the well or the Samaritan woman. She's unnamed, although her story takes up 42 verses of the 879 total verses in the Gospel of John. That's a pretty big percentage. The author makes sure that we're aware of her nationality, we're aware of her gender. She's a Samaritan. That's actually mentioned 9 times in this story. And out of the 22 times that women are referenced throughout the whole book of John, 12 of them are used to describe this particular woman. And for all of you mathematicians, that's more than half of the times that women are mentioned are in this one story. So knowledge was also important to the author of John. Knowledge or knowing or some variation of those words is mentioned 117 times in the 21 chapters of this gospel. Are you tired of the numbers yet? So of special importance to this author was the knowledge that Jesus was the Son of God. And one way people acquire knowledge is through curiosity. And so questions are abundant in this gospel, and they're also abundant across all the gospels. So just a quick recap. Knowledge, questions, gender, nationality, all are important to the text today. So the story of this woman begins, like so many other stories of Jesus do, with a journey. He and his disciples were traveling from point A to point B, and the most direct way to get there was through this region called Samaria. Now, when the readers would have heard the word Samaria, this is the point where they would have booed at the location, or ominous music would have played in the background, like, right? So going to Samaria for a Jew was a no-no. It was, we'll talk a little bit more about why in a minute, but this region, although it was kind of off limits, it contained some pretty significant cultural and religious landmarks. One being a well connected to Jacob, a grandson of Abraham, who was one of the most important founding fathers of Judaism. And at this famous well was where Jacob had met his favorite wife, Rachel. Rachel had been at the well. He had asked her for a drink. It was love at first sight, a proposal happened, and family drama ensued. Well, Jacob went on to have numerous children, including 12 famous or infamous sons, who were the first of the 12 tribes who would become Israel. And all of that happens in the first book of the Bible. Well, this famous well, located in Samaria, was where Jesus found himself asking a strange woman for his own water during his journey. The story reads like this. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. So this woman was no dummy. She was suspicious of this strange man, and rightly so. His type didn't typically mingle with her type, at least not on purpose. Plus, every woman knows that when you're alone and approached by a man, you should at least put your guard up. And also, his actions seemed suspiciously reminiscent of an ancient and very familiar marriage proposal. And it could seem at first that Jesus was hitting on her. And because of all of this, she didn't simply do what he asked. She didn't simply get him some water and engage in conversation. Instead, she dug a little bit deeper and she asked him a question. Why was a guy like him talking to a girl like her? There had to be something deeper going on there. And there was. So way back in 722 BCE, that's 722 years before the birth of Christ, if anyone is still keeping track of all those numbers, Israel was two kingdoms with two kings and two capitals. There was the southern kingdom, also called Judah, after its largest tribe, and it's actually the name, that name Judah is where we eventually get the name Jew or Jewish. In northern Israel, or just Israel as it was referred to, the capital was Samaria. And originally, before there were two kingdoms of Israel, there was just one place to worship and sacrifice, no matter where you lived. But after the kingdom split into two, the kingdom of the north, the king of the northern kingdom, designated another holy location for worship and sacrifice. And Israelites in the north no longer had to travel to the south to Jerusalem to worship and offer sacrifices. This was a logistical gift for anyone who wanted to save on travel expenses, but it caused a big rift between the northern and the southern Israelites. Well, in 722, Assyria came and conquered Israel in the north. As you can imagine, with similarly to all the conflict that's happening in our world, when countries are attacked, people flee. So a lot of people fled. A lot of people were also deported once the Assyrians took power. So in order to discourage any uprisings from the Israelites and to keep an eye on things, the Assyrian rulers brought in people from all over the place that they trusted, including their own people, to help resettle the northern cities. Well, as you can imagine, all these new people entering the neighborhoods changed the cultural and religious landscape. This has never been a problem in the past, present, or future, right? After a while, the northern Israelites began to intermarry with their non-Israelite friends and neighbors who had settled in their cities. And eventually, a remnant of the northern Israelites would begin to call themselves Samaritans. Now, Samaritans believed themselves to be the truest and most purest believers, closer to the original Hebrew line, because they had never left their homeland. Everybody else had been displaced. They also believed that they held the most true and sacred place of worship and the most accurate scripture. They claimed that only authority could be brought to them by the Pentateuch. This is the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. Southern Israel, Judah, also claimed authority, however, in their books of poetry and prophecy and history. And this is where we get the entirety of what we refer to as the Old Testament. For the Samaritans, it was just those first 5 books. We thought questions of biblical authority were new ones. They've been going on forever. Well, the rift between the two Israels, it was just eventually beyond repair. And both Jewish and Samaritan religious leaders taught that it was wrong to have any contact with the opposing group. Neither was supposed to go into each other's territories. They weren't even supposed to speak to each other. And the Judean prophets, they referred to the Samaritans as dogs and half-breeds. They even called them adulterous whores. So you get the idea. They weren't friends. And all of that background, and all of that history, and all of that hurt was rolled into one seemingly simple question. Why is a Jewish guy like you talking to a Samaritan woman like me? It wasn't just two people flirting at the well. It wasn't just a casual question. This woman's life could have been in danger by this cultural enemy that she didn't know. But this woman was intelligent. She understood the geopolitical ramifications of the conversation and of her question. Jesus continued to talk to her, and he said, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket. The well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Whew, so not only did the woman understand the politics, she understood the theological ramifications of what Jesus had just offered her. Some sort of alternative water in a harsh landscape where water was scarce and painstakingly acquired. Thirst and its squashing was part of life and survival. And this woman was understandably still suspicious. This enemy stranger seemed to be diminishing the status of their common ancestor. So one of the few things they had in common. And this ancestor had famously proposed to his wife right where they were sitting. In a matter of moments, the woman had been approached with what sounded like a pickup line and then mansplained by a potentially dangerous stranger. It quickly became evident that this wasn't just a casual conversation. It was deeply political and theological. And interestingly, from this moment on, whether because the author grew tired of reminding us, or because the woman had engaged with Jesus on such a deep level, or because she had somehow proven herself to be more than just a title, more than just the woman's nationality, she's no longer referred to as Samaritan. She's simply referred to as the woman for the rest of the story. The story continues like this. Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." And Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come back." And the woman answered him, "I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying I have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now isn't your husband. What you have said is true." So it's really important that we pause here for just a minute, because these 3 verses have been used to characterize this woman above all else. And most interpretations say something about her being loose or promiscuous, which is an interpretation I would like to just get out of the way. Western cultural interpretations have been added to this story so much that there is so little meat left behind its veiled morality for women. Generations of women have had this story used to moralize them. But we must ask deeper questions to get to the bottom of who this woman was and her situation outside of a few sentences about her marital status. So first, Jesus doesn't have an issue with this woman's lifestyle. Nowhere in this text does Jesus condemn her for her relationships. He simply states facts. And there's multiple possibilities outside of what my grandmother would have called loose living for her to have had 5 husbands. In early theological history, the husbands of this unnamed enemy woman, they were interpreted as allegory. The 5 husbands representing the 5 senses, all of which could have been easily tricked and not offering the fullness of knowledge, right? Remember, knowledge was a big deal to the author. But Jesus stopping by offered a new kind of knowledge, one that was the foundation of him, and one that could only be understood with the sixth sense of the Spirit, right? So the allegory, the men were just allegory. The church father Augustine said that the five husbands represented the 5 books of the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And recall that there was a disagreement between the Jews and the Samaritans about those being the only authoritative scriptures. So the allegory here being that the 5 books only offered a portion of knowledge, and that Jesus had come to offer a 6th way through knowledge of himself. Now, knowing what we know about the writer of John and his love of the theme of knowledge, these are possibilities that could be good ones. But another practical possibility, and actually my favorite, is that this woman had found herself caught in a failed marriage system and successive widowhood. Now, in the scriptural law, found authoritative by both Samaritans and Jews, because it's in one of those first 5 books, there was a specific system in place to take care of widows. And I want to read it, all of this one portion of it, because I love it so much. And it's in Deuteronomy chapter 5. This is what they had in place for widows. When brothers reside together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go to her, taking her in marriage and performing the duty of a husband's brother to her. But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother widow shall go to the elders at the gate and say, "My husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me." And then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. And if he persists, saying, "I have no desire to marry her," then his brother's wife shall go to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and declare, "This is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house." And throughout Israel his family shall be known as the house of him whose sandal was pulled off. Shoo! And lest you think this was a completely ancient issue, it also came up again in Jesus' time. Jesus was asked, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving him a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up the children for his brother." So they go on to say there were 7 brothers. The first was married and died, and the second one married, and the third married her. And so the same way, 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. And in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Because 7 had married her. So, in a nutshell, when husbands died, it was normal for their brothers to marry their widows. And it wasn't unlikely that this was the case with the woman. She could have also been very easily a victim of divorce by husbands who wanted more advantageous marriages. She could have been a concubine, legally married but with lesser status. She could have also been a second wife. So when we ask the right questions, we get better answers. What is really going on with the woman and her husbands? We have the opportunity to dig so much deeper than just our surface reaction at hearing, "Oh, she's got 5 husbands," right? The woman and Jesus, they go on to have a deeply theological conversation. But it's his knowledge and her acceptance of her deep personal self that ultimately turns her into a believer and then a type of evangelist. She's so excited. She leaves her water bucket, goes to the town, and encourages her people to come and hear and see for themselves what she had experienced. And we're told that the people learned so much, there's that emphasis on knowledge again, that Jesus stayed with them for 2 days, and many of them began to follow Jesus for themselves. So it begs the question, why have we assumed for so long that the underlying story here is about a woman's promiscuity rather than about her role as a theologian, an evangelist, and a leader of her people? Or that this unnamed, unconventional woman became a collaborator with Jesus in bringing the Samaritans to new knowledge? The fact that the text is that, regardless of whether this woman's story is an allegory for the Samaritan people, a treatise on the marriage rights of widows, or if it did in fact choose a loose woman for its central character, Jesus' issue wasn't with the woman's relationship status at all. He was simply pointing it out to offer proof that he was who he said he was. He wasn't just some creepy stranger looking for a relationship at the well. He was the Son of God. His extended conversation with her, his lack of condemnation for her status and situation, it solidifies that those seen as less than by society, they weren't a fringe part of Jesus' mission. They were central to it. There was only a desire to let this woman know that she was seen and she was invited to the mission for who she was, regardless of her gender, her nationality, or whose bed she slept in at night. And as with many things, our focus on her morality, it's likely a result of history, who preserves it, who gets to interpret it, and whose interpretation is the loudest. But this isn't a story about morality. Among other things, it's a story about learning to dig a little deeper. It has to do with the questions that get asked. The woman started by asking the questions, why? Why are you talking to me? Who do you think you are? And what authority do you have to challenge Jacob, our ancestor? Why? Who? What? Now, so many of us, after we get past toddler stage, we stop asking why, because it's conditioned out of us, mainly for the sanity of our caregivers. But it really should be introduced, because so many misunderstandings could be solved by simply asking something as simple as why, or what, or who, or how. So, interestingly, way back in 1810, there's a number again, a British merchant invented and patented the tin can. You probably have some of these in your pantry right now. Well, it was a great way to keep food sterilized, to travel with it, to have it last for a long time. However, he neglected to ask the question, how do we open it? So for about 50 years, cans had to be opened with a chisel and a hammer. And it wasn't until about 1958 that a commercial can opener was invented. It was put in grocery stores, so people could use it in a grocery store, but they still couldn't open cans at home. It wasn't until 12 years after that that the home can opener was introduced, right? He failed to ask a question, but he had an answer. How do I preserve, but not how do I open it? Questions are what have moved the world forward. Questions like, how did we get here? How does this work? But questions also matter in our understandings and interactions with one another, because so often we don't take time to ask the questions. Life goes so fast, who has time to sit and do anything but rush to judgment? But so often we rely on what we see and what we initially feel to give us the whole story. But most often, that's just the cover of the book. And seeing may be believing, but it doesn't equal understanding. To understand, we must look beyond what just our eyes and our senses and our initial feelings tell us. Maybe those ancient theologians were onto something with their allegory. But often, we assume we know answers when we don't even realize what the questions are. And of course, more often our questions won't have satisfactory answers. Out of some 180 questions posed to Jesus, he only responded to somewhere around 3 of them. And to the rest, he offered questions in return. Jesus, in the 4 books of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he asks somewhere around 300 questions. What would happen if we became better questioners? What if good questions became more important to us than just answers? Questions are just a starting point for depth. There's a story about a person who approached a man with a dog and asked, "Does your dog bite?" And their man responded, "No." So the person reached out to touch the dog, and the dog bit him. And the person who got bit was upset at the person with the dog and said to the person, I thought you said your dog doesn't bite. And the man said back to him, well, it doesn't. That is not my dog. The point being, it's all about the questions. So let's talk practically for a moment. What does this mean? So when we observe something that seems off, or when someone shares something with us instead of judgment, we pause to ask, what's really going on here? Why is this person choosing to tell me this information at this time and in this way? Asking questions instead of immediately responding also helps the other person feel seen and heard. Or another example, sometimes when we feel attacked or defensive, what if we take the time to ask, to pause and say and think and ask the question, why is this person acting or reacting in this way? What is at the root of their action? Because often in a situation like that, on the surface, we see pride and narcissism and ignorance and bullying towards us. But often, when we can ask the right question, what's really underneath is sometimes fear and anxiety and pain. And when we receive information that doesn't add up, or it sounds too good to be true, or even just fuels the things that we already think or believe to be true, what if we began to ask questions? What if we began to ask things like, where is this information coming from? Why is this information being offered to me? And what is it asking of me? We may need to also ask ourselves better questions. Have you ever found yourself in a situation when you responded from something deep within you and found yourself asking, where in the world did that come from? I didn't even know that was in me. Sometimes we need to ask ourselves those questions. And if we pause to ask the questions, the key word being pause, we may be surprised at some of the answers. And it may also just lead us to more questions. But we also may have a better understanding, or at least respect, for those we think of usually as enemies, of those we love, and sometimes even a better understanding of ourselves. But we can't get more of the story. We can't learn more about a person's humanity, our commonalities, and our uniquenesses unless we pause to ask the questions. So today, I want us to do just that for a few minutes, to sit and think and ask ourselves a few questions. Here they are. What are some situations or relationships where you need to ask better questions? And what might those questions be? And what are some questions you need to ask yourself? All right, Crosspointe, I hope we have a really good week. Let's be good question askers this week. See you next time.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.